Welcome back to Connect and Transform. In this video, we're finishing up our project creating a text comparison tool for the web. On the left, I'm going to select the project file at the end of the last video, and on the right, I'm going to select the latest project file. I'm going to hide everything that's exactly the same. So these are all the changes since the last video. At the top of the file, the first line, the only change was to add an ID, and that ID is used in the line directly below it. Basically, if someone clicks the Choose New Files button here in the top left of the header, I had to make sure to update the inner HTML of this center button to make sure that its toggle state was correctly set. And then I implemented copy group and copy line functions. Over here in the bottom left, I removed a couple lines that were never used. And then at the very bottom of the right-hand file, there's a couple event listeners where these line and group shifting buttons are actually connected to function calls. So I'm going to switch over real quick to the code, and we can briefly go over copy line and copy group. So copy group is the simpler one. Basically, we are passing in the line that contains the button that we clicked. So we would have clicked one of those buttons with the word group in it. And then whichever line contains that button, that line element is what gets passed in. So first, we're tracking backwards. So we're saying, as long as there is a previous sibling and that previous sibling belongs to the same was allowed by the same data rule. In other words, if it's in the same contiguous group, then we're going to backtrack our element pointer. But only as long as it's in our same group. And then we're going to call copy line on the first element in the contiguous group. And then we're going to go forward, looking at every adjacent sibling that is in the same group. And then we're going to advance that pointer and call copy line on it. So pretty straightforward. Now the actual copy line function is a little bit more complicated just because there's a lot of varying HTML configurations. But we're assuming that by default, if we're copying a line or a group over to the other side, that we're going to end up either with something that is exact, so it's literally the same on each side, or it's going to be empty on each side. And we're keeping track of a few constants, like what side, left or right, is this line on? What about the other line? And then we're getting the actual other line element. Then there's some specific logic around editing the inner HTML, which in this case is done by appending an entire child. And then if we've determined that it's going to be copying content from one side to the other, then both sides need to have the class name exact. And so we would be setting the class name on the line that we clicked on, as well as setting the class name on the other line in some cases. We're also updating the data rule and data content attributes of the other line. And then all this stuff down here is just logic around updating the inner HTML, or appending children, or removing children. So for example, the debug and diagnostic text that we've hidden is in a span with a class name of rule. And so we're saying that if we see that, for simplicity's sake, we're just going to remove it and not even worry about it. But everything else does get copied to the other side. So let's go back to our demo here. And I'm going to show all the exact match stuff. So for example, I can push either of these lines to the other side. So let's push it from the right to the left. So I can click line here, or group, either one. And we see that it updated it. So now we have this ID text over here. And it's updated the class and the styling as well. And if I were to download the left file, the file that gets downloaded would have this change in it. Let's scroll down a bit to one where there's an actual group. Like here, for example. So if I select group and I push that over, it pushed the entire group. And if I select the red one here, I believe this is possibly rule 7, so this might push over the red line and the empty one below it. Yeah, it did. So I think that is kind of correct. I might change the behavior just for rule 7, because rule 7 is the exception where it actually spans multiple lines. Might make an exception where rule 7 only copies lines that are of the same styling as well as the same rule. But that would be a minor change, and I wouldn't make a video just about that. But for example, I can take this, I can move the whole group over, and if I were to take a group of 1, I can move a group of 1 over. I can move an empty line over. So yeah, there you have it. And we could download the left or the right, and it would retain all of these updates that we just made. And I can hide the exact match, and we can just keep pushing groups back and forth. And maybe I'll show and hide those. And there we go. So yeah, you can see how you can basically get to a point where everything is identical. So yeah, every objective that I had for this project, which was to be able to drag and drop or upload files, that was accomplished. Being able to reasonably group and style lines based on how similar or dissimilar they are, I would say that was accomplished. And being able to push over individual lines or entire groups has also been accomplished, and we can then download those changes by downloading either file, left or right. So I would call this project a success. Thanks for joining with me on these videos. Thanks for watching.